So imagine standing right at the mouth of this massive subterranean cave system. You took a few steps past the overhang, and instantly the whole environment just shifts.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Right. Like the temperature plummets, all those familiar sounds of the forest outside are just swallowed up by this heavy, damp silence. And then you take a few more steps, you look over your shoulder, and the horizon, the sunlight, the trees, it all just vanishes into a tiny pinpoint of gray.
It's a terrifying thought, honestly.
It really is. And I mean, you wouldn't just keep walking into that pitch black expanse purely because you were curious about what was down there.
Yeah.
Like doing that would be universally recognized as a terrible, life-threatening idea.
Oh, absolutely. Total recklessness.
Yeah. But the wild thing is, every single day, professionals in our schools willingly step into an emotional darkness that is just as unmapped and just as perilous.
Yes. And that brings us right to the mission of today's deep dive.
Exactly. We are unpacking a really brilliant, highly unusual document today titled, What a DSL Can Learn From a Cave Explorer. And for those tuning in from outside the education sector, a DSL is a designated safeguarding lead.
Right. They are the professionals responsible for handling the intense, complex emotional crises and trauma of young students.
And what I love about this source material is how it mashes up the extreme physical survival of caving with the really delicate, emotionally charged world of youth safeguarding.
It's a striking comparison. And the fundamental thesis of the document rests on this crucial premise between these two seemingly totally unrelated worlds.
Which is what, exactly?
Whether you are dealing with a physical cave system beneath the earth or the uncharted emotional trauma of a teenager, curiosity alone is fundamentally dangerous.
Wow. Yeah, that makes sense.
Right. The source argues that confidence, when it is entirely disconnected from a framework of safety, is just recklessness masquerading as bravery.
That concept completely shifts how we typically view intervention, doesn't it? I mean, we usually praise people for just bravely stepping in to help.
We do. But this document forces us to look at the severe physical reality of the cave environment to understand why just stepping in isn't enough.
Right, because it details what actually happens to the human body and brain deep underground. Like visibility drops to near zero.
Wow.
All your surface reference points just disappear. And the acoustics of a cave distort sound so severely that you can't even tell how far away something is, or even what direction the sound is coming from.
Yeah, your senses just betray you.
Exactly. The text even says your internal chronometer gets thrown off. Your perception of time starts to drift because you lack the environmental cues that keep the human brain anchored to a normal 24-hour cycle.
What's fascinating here is how that physical loss of bearings perfectly mirrors the internal state of the students these professionals are trying to help.
Oh, that is a really good point.
Because in a cave system, the environment actively distorts your spatial awareness, right?
Right.
And for a young person experiencing harm, the psychological environment does the exact same thing to their perception of reality. They often don't even recognize the creeping disorientation of their own lives.
I was actually trying to map that feeling of disorientation onto something relatable.
What did you come up with?
Well, it reminds me of that sudden jolt you get if you are deep inside a massive, unfamiliar office building, windowless, and the power grid just completely fails.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Like the hum of the HVAC cuts out, the screens go black, the emergency lights haven't kicked on yet, and in that split second, you lose all sense of which way is north. You just don't know where the door is.
That's a great way to visualize it. But there is a crucial difference highlighted in the source, right?
Yeah, exactly. Cave explorers choose to walk into the dark. But these students, they are dragged into it. Plus, for the students, it isn't like a sudden power outage.
No, not at all. It is an agonizingly slow fade. The document breaks down how students gradually adapt to highly toxic, manipulative, or dangerous situations.
Like over a long period of time.
Yes. Think about the mechanics of grooming, for example. An abuser doesn't start with extreme behavior. They start by just slightly shifting a boundary.
Right. Just a tiny bit.
And then they shift it again. Over months or years, a student existing within a harmful peer culture or dealing with chronic emotional neglect, they undergo this fundamental psychological recalibration.
So their normal isn't actually normal anymore.
Exactly. Their internal compass for what constitutes a safe relationship slowly adjusts to the darkness. By the time they actually end up sitting across the desk from a safeguarding professional, their baseline for reality is entirely skewed. They have normalized the abnormal just to survive it.
Wow. So the adult isn't just dealing with a student who has a problem. They're dealing with someone who doesn't even realize how deep underground they actually are.
Precisely.
Which means when a DSL decides to step in, they aren't walking down some paved, well-lit road because these kids are already profoundly disoriented. The adult is stepping into completely unmapped territory alongside them.
And that unmapped territory requires immense strategic and emotional agility. I mean, you cannot just consult a standard map because the landscape shifts with every new disclosure.
Yeah, the text explicitly mentions how these situations lack any obvious precedents. A DSL might be dealing with, I don't know, emerging forms of online exploitation that literally didn't exist 3 years ago.
Right. Or compounded by incredibly multi-layered family dynamics.
Exactly. Or a student navigating a really complex identity struggle in a hostile environment. There is no manual with exact GPS coordinates for this specific crisis sitting in that office.
There really isn't.
Okay, let's unpack this, because reading through this section brought up a pretty significant counter-argument for me.
Ooh, let's hear it.
Let's say a safeguarding adult does everything flawlessly. They are perfectly empathetic, they follow all the legal protocols, they involve the right agencies. Isn't the whole point of these interventions, and even the therapy later, designed to just return the student to their baseline?
I see where you're going with this.
Like, if we just patch them up, why can't we just close the box and put everything back to exactly how it was before the trauma occurred?
Yeah, that is an incredibly common assumption.
Yeah.
But it fundamentally misunderstands the mechanics of trauma and disclosure.
How so?
The source explicitly addresses this by introducing the concept of the emotional point of no return.
The point of no return.
Right. In physical case exploration, there are specific routes like a steep vertical drop where once you commit your weight to the rope and descend, the risk profile of your entire expedition permanently changes.
Oh, because you literally cannot just climb back up the way you came.
Exactly. The physics of the space prevent you from reversing course. And the psychology of disclosure works the exact same way.
That is heavy.
It is. When a student finally articulates their pain, when they speak the abuse or the exploitation or the distress out loud to an adult, that articulation reorganizes their cognitive reality.
So just saying it changes everything.
Yes. A silent trauma is a burden, but a spoken trauma becomes a shared reality. You cannot unring that bell. The relationship between the student and the adult is permanently altered.
And the student's own relationship to their trauma changes too, because now it's out in the open.
Exactly. So the adult stepping into that space is initiating an irreversible process. Once you ask the question, you have to be prepared for the fact that the answer shatters the old reality.
Wow. Which is why the source emphasizes that wandering into that emotional space just to gather facts without a plan for what comes next is so damaging.
Yes, you are basically leading a young person off a psychological ledge.
And knowing that these conversations push a student past an emotional point of no return, that is exactly why the physical tools of the cave explorer become such a powerful metaphor for psychological safety.
Because if you can't go back, you need a safe way forward.
Right. The source lists the actual hardware used in caving. Physical anchors driven deep into the rock, reflective markers to show the path forward, dynamic safety lines, and highly structured exit strategies.
You never just wander down a tunnel with a flashlight hoping you find a way out.
Never.
And we have to translate those physical tools into the mechanics of relational safety. For a student to safely explore their own painful vulnerability, they need an emotional safety line. They need trusted adults who function as those anchors.
Let's actually dig into that. How does a human being function as a physical anchor in a psychological sense?
It's a great question.
Because it's easy to say, be an anchor, but what does that actually look like when a 14-year-old is having a full-blown panic attack in your office?
Well, it really comes down to emotional containment and nervous system regulation.
Okay, nervous system regulation.
Yes. When a student's in free fall, maybe they're hyperventilating, crying, or showing sudden anger, because of the disclosure, their nervous system is entirely dysregulated.
Right, they're totally overwhelmed.
Exactly. Emotional containment means the adult does not match that panic. The DSL maintains a calm, flat, but very empathetic tone. They keep their physical movements slow and predictable.
So they don't feed into the chaos.
Right. They provide a clear, immovable emotional boundary. By regulating their own nervous system, the adult provides a stable frequency that the student's erratic nervous system can eventually latch onto and mirror.
Ah, I see.
The adult becomes the immovable anchor that physically and emotionally catches the student's fall.
That makes the concept so much clearer. It's not just about giving good advice or saying the right words. It's about physically and neurologically absorbing their panic without breaking.
Yes, exactly.
But, I mean, to do that, to be that immovable object, the adult has to be incredibly grounded themselves.
They do. And the source makes a brilliant point here about isolation.
Oh, right. Because cave explorers rarely, if ever, dive alone.
Never. Isolation magnifies danger exponentially. If you are alone in the dark, disorientation is much harder to detect in yourself. And if you get pinned or injured, rescue is nearly impossible.
So if the adult is the anchor for the student who is anchoring the adult, I mean, they need their own safety lines.
This is a vital mirror for the professionals doing the work. A DSL cannot carry the weight of complex, emotionally devastating disclosures entirely alone.
It's just too much.
It is. The risk of secondary trauma or simply losing objective perspective on a case is astronomically high when you operate in a silo. Those safety lines take the form of formal safeguarding supervision and team consultation.
So they have to talk about it with other professionals.
Yes, a safeguarding lead must regularly sit down with peers or external supervisors to unpack their decision-making process. Sharing that reflective practice protects their professional judgment.
It ensures the professional doesn't slowly become disoriented by the sheer volume of trauma they are carrying.
Precisely.
It creates this massive interconnected network of ropes and anchors holding everyone up. And what I really love about this framework is how this reliance on team support completely redefines what success actually looks like.
Oh, definitely, because the goal of the expedition changes entirely.
Right. It points out that in caving, the ultimate measure of success is not how deep you can push yourself into the earth. It isn't about claiming new territory at all costs.
No, not at all.
True success is returning safely to the surface with your understanding of the cave intact.
That distinction is paramount. In the safeguarding translation, this means the work is never about extracting a disclosure at any cost. It is not an interrogation.
Right. You aren't just digging for secrets.
Exactly. A DSL is not pursuing the raw emotional exposure of a student just to get to the bottom of the mystery or to complete a report.
Because, I mean, if you drill down relentlessly to get all the facts, but you leave the student completely shattered, dysregulated, and unsupported in the aftermath, you haven't succeeded at all.
No. You've just orchestrated a very well-documented catastrophe.
Wow. That's exactly it.
Safeguarding has to balance truth-seeking with intense emotional protection. The ultimate goal is preserving the long-term well-being, dignity, and trust of that young person. Gathering the information is secondary to keeping the human being intact.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Because as airtight as this cave explorer framework feels, the source includes a section called the honest bit.
Yes, I love that part.
They intentionally deconstruct their own metaphor to point out where the comparison fundamentally fails.
I always appreciate when authors do that. No analogy maps perfectly onto reality. What are the critical deviations they point out?
Well, the biggest one is a hard rule: students are not mysteries to uncover. We touched on the idea of not interrogating them, but the document takes it further. It states that safeguarding should never become an intrusive expedition.
Because you aren't mapping an inanimate physical object.
Exactly.
That is a profound difference. The terrain a cave explorer navigates, the limestone, the underground rivers, the stalactites, it is entirely physical. But human emotional life breathes, it reacts, it remembers, and it anticipates. It is entirely relational.
And the nature of the risk is completely different, too. The cave explorer is facing a literal physical survival risk in a hostile, extreme environment. But the DSL is navigating emotional and relational risks, and they're doing it within an educational and pastoral environment. The context completely changes the rules of engagement.
It changes the entire moral obligation of the environment. Think about it. A cave is profoundly indifferent to the explorer.
Yeah, it doesn't care if you're there.
It doesn't care if you map it, and it certainly doesn't care if you survive it. But a school environment, a pastoral care system, is built explicitly on connection.
Right. The student's well-being isn't an obstacle to overcome. It is the entire purpose of the institution's existence.
Exactly. The school is supposed to be the safe harbor, not the hostile wilderness.
Which really raises the question of implementation. Because, you can have a DSL who perfectly understands nervous system regulation and emotional containment. But if they are operating in a vacuum...
Oh, it falls apart.
Yeah. If the rest of the school treats them as the sole dumping ground for every crisis, the whole system eventually collapses under the weight.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is what the document categorizes as the leadership layer.
The leadership layer.
Yes, the responsibility of being the anchor doesn't just sit on the shoulders of the individual safeguarding professional. It has to be distributed across the entire culture of the institution. A genuinely strong, psychologically safeguarding culture ensures that staff aren't left emotionally exposed.
It's about laying down the infrastructure, installing the permanent anchors long before the crisis actually hits.
Exactly that. Well-being literacy must be embedded into the developmental pathways of the staff. School leadership has to provide structured, predictable follow-through after serious concerns are raised.
So the DSL isn't just left hanging.
Right. It requires a leadership team that is deeply reflective, ensuring that when a student does disclose painful experiences, they aren't just handed off to one overwhelmed DSL, they are caught by a sustained institutional network of support.
So what does this all mean? When we look at all the sources, the ultimate takeaway is incredibly clear.
It really is.
The unknown, whether that is a subterranean cave system or the complex, unspoken trauma of a young person, is dangerous, not merely because it's dark. It is dangerous because people become deeply disoriented in the dark.
Their baseline for reality shifts.
Yes. And once they step into that space, once they articulate that trauma, the exit routes they used to rely on disappear completely.
This raises an important question for anyone doing this work. The document asks the reader directly, when students enter emotionally difficult territory in your setting, have we built a strong enough rope back to help them return safely, with their trust, their dignity, and their emotional stability entirely intact?
That is a heavy, necessary question, and it's one that extends far beyond the walls of a school or the parameters of a formal safeguarding policy.
Absolutely.
As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over in your own life. Outside of institutional environments, think about the times you ask a friend, a partner, or a colleague to open up and be truly vulnerable with you.
When you push them to share something deeply painful or complex.
Exactly. Are you acting like a reckless explorer, dragging them into the dark with just a flashlight, eager to uncover their secrets out of curiosity?
Wow.
Or have you done the relational work to build a secure rope back for them, a guarantee of non-judgment, of steady emotional support, of absolute confidentiality before you ever ask them to step into the unknown?
That is the ultimate test of our relationship.
It really is. Thank you for taking this journey into the dark with us today. We'll see you next time.